Today, the topic of our discussion is why we feel the way we do. We have a panel of staff members from multiple buildings who have worked together to help you. Today from our panel, we have from District Office, Jennifer DeMayo and Kelly Whitney Rivera. We have Jennifer Shidman, a psychologist from South, Caroline Abate, health and phys ed teacher from North, Adriana Perez, psychologist from Central, and Grace Paridi, school counselor from North. The format of this forum is a webinar, so our presenters will speak to you and you will see their faces, but they cannot see or hear you. We have enabled the chat feature, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to chat the panelists and someone will identify or answer that question either during the presentation or towards the end. Any questions you have regarding opening of school year, not related to the topic of this particular discussion, will be directed to the appropriate personnel at your home school. And of course, as we shared in the newsletter, we have 5 forums. So if there's something specific that needs to be addressed during those forums, obviously you'll have an opportunity to share then. And of course, if there's anything you want us to consider going into those forums, again, feel free to reach out to anyone on this panel and we'd be happy to answer those questions. We appreciate you joining us today. We hope to see you again Thursday at 10 a.m. where we will be discussing coping and balancing and strategies for dealing with uncertainty. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Shidman, who will lead our discussion today. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. I think Ms. Abate, you're having some trouble sharing your screen?
Yes, I think only Mr. Bowen's allowed to share his screen at the moment. I don't know if you can just change that setting really quick.
Oh, yep, let me do that then.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jennifer Shidman, and today we're going to be talking about why we feel the way we feel. And we'll get the PowerPoint going in just a second. So before we talk about why we feel the way we feel, it's important to talk about our emotions in general. Think now about some different emotions that you have throughout the day. You good? Some different emotions that you have throughout the day, whether it's happy, scared, nervous, anxious, angry, whatever you may be feeling. And some of these emotions can be positive, some of these emotions can feel good, some might not be helpful. But today we're going to be focusing in on negative emotions. So because these emotions don't feel good, a lot of the times we don't want to feel them, but they do serve a purpose. Some negative emotions are helpful and some are unhelpful. How do we determine which one it is, whether they're helpful or unhelpful? Well, that depends. And an important question to ask yourself in determining that is whether the emotion that you have is stopping you from achieving your goals. When does an emotion go from being helpful to unhelpful? So in small amounts of negative emotion, it usually prepares us to kind of, to get what we want and achieve our goals. So if we think about anxiety, if we have a test coming up and we feel just a little bit anxious or a little bit nervous, what happens in our body is our blood starts pumping, we start to breathe just a little bit faster, we start to hone in or focus on what we need to focus on, and that's a little bit of anxiety and our body preparing us to take that exam. Now think about a time when you felt very anxious or very nervous, and what's happening in your body. I saw a comment that people can't hear me, is that right? No? Can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you clear. I think the comment indicated there was some choppiness to the audio that they're receiving from.
Okay. So again, imagine you have that test and you're feeling so anxious. And what's happening in your body in that case is you may start to hyperventilate. Your blood is flowing, so fast, and your mind might go blank. And in that case, that emotion of anxiety kind of just went from maybe like a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, all the way up to a 10, and it's no longer helpful, and your mind might go blank, and you may not be able to do well on that test. So if we think about what's the point then of this emotion, what's the point of my adrenaline pumping so fast that I start to hyperventilate? Well, biologically, if we think about kind of like caveman times, and we think about a caveman kind of hunting his meal, and he's confronted by a saber-toothed tiger. Now, there's something called fight or flight that happens in our nervous system and in our body when there's a real threat, like a saber-toothed tiger. So what's happening in that caveman's body is it's getting him ready to literally fight for his life or run away. Now, thankfully, we're not confronted by saber-toothed tigers anymore, hopefully, but our bodies still kind of trick us into having this reaction when really there is no significant threat. Slide. So why do we feel the way we feel? So we just went over a few different emotions, but what is it that makes us feel the way we feel? What is it that drives our emotions? And do we have the ability to control them? Well, let's take a look at this example. So you have two kids, they're on a beach, and they're in the water swimming, having a great time, and all of a sudden a big wave comes and hits both of them. They both go under the water, both come up, and one feels so scared, terrified, she goes running out of the water and is crying and screaming. The other child comes up out of the water, feels excited, is happy, and can't wait for the next wave to come and hit them. So what is the difference here? We have the same exact thing that happened to these two children, but they feel two completely different ways. So the wave hit them. One feels scared and one feels excited and happy. So what is the missing link here? Slide. And that missing link, one of the most important links is our thoughts. So think to yourselves for a second. The wave hit both kids. One felt scared, one felt excited. What might they both be thinking?
So Dr.
Felt scared might be thinking, oh no, the wave put me under. What if I drown? What if I don't make it? And then that child feels scared, terrified, and runs out of the water. The other child that feels happy might be thinking, wow, what a rush. That was great. That wave put me under. I came back up. That was great. And my adrenaline's pumping. So again, here we have the same thing that happened to these two people. They're thinking two different things about what happened to them. They both feel differently and behave differently. Okay, let's take a look at a few examples to help illustrate that point.
So Dr. Shimon, before I go into some of the scenarios, so what we're really saying is that our thoughts really drive our feelings and ultimately our behavior.
Absolutely.
So let's look at the first scenarios. We are required to wear a mask when in public, and if we can't honor the 6 feet distance. So I have to wear the mask is the scenario. So my first thought that can come into my mind is it's too hot and I get sweaty under my mask. I hate this. I can't stand this. My emotion can turn into being frustration. And my behavior could be I refuse to wear the mask and I stay home and I'm bored. Whereas if I change my thought where it indicates it's hot, I get sweaty under my mask, even though it's uncomfortable, I can do this. Now my emotion can turn into being I'm annoyed, but I'm accepting it. And my behavior results in wearing the mask and be able to go out and live and embrace the new world and in my new norm. Right.
So again, wearing a mask, it is uncomfortable, but we have the same scenario. So we're never going to feel good about it. It's not comfortable. So the same scenario, you have to wear a mask and you look at it in two totally different ways. And in one of the scenarios, someone's staying home and not doing anything and kind of withdrawing even more during a difficult time where it is more difficult to see people, while the other person is able to go out because they've kind of accepted the new norm, even though they're kind of annoyed about it.
Perfect. So I know that we came up with other scenarios, and I know another scenario that we looked at was your friend doesn't, I believe it's the next slide. Your friend doesn't answer your text, but you see that they posted something on Snap. So now my first thought, and now different thoughts can really run through my head. So scenario one, in the same situation, my thought would be, she's ignoring me. That is wrong. My feeling could evolve, I'm angry. And my behavior, I start ignoring her. Another thought that, or another way I could approach this would be, she doesn't like me. There must be something wrong with me, which makes me then my emotion sad and eventually can turn into being depressed. And my behavior can result into being withdrawn from multiple friendships. Another way to approach the same scenario would be, I know she read my text, but she must have been busy. My emotion, I'm neutral about it. And my behavior, I reach out to her again and ask what happened. So same scenario, but how our thoughts and our feelings and our behavior really are all connected in what aspect or what results in it.
Right. And here we have the scenario that happened is, your friend posted a snap while they didn't answer you. And really the way that you interpret that or the way that you think about that can really impact your life. Imagine if you're telling yourself that just from this kind of neutral event that your friend doesn't like you, maybe there's something wrong with you and you start to withdraw from your friendships. That can really have an impact on you. Or you start ignoring your friend and then she or he start ignoring you back, and then your kind of friendship could dissolve based on information that may not have even been true.
It's funny how that one thought kind of was a runaway train of all these negative things that could happen afterwards, when in reality, your friend could have just opened the text and then they got called to go do something else and forgot about it.
Yep.
I know then I want to bring into another scenario that some of you have had to face during these times. And the scenario comes into, my parent or my guardian was laid off. And two ways we could approach it. So we have the thought could be, what if we cannot pay the bills? Will we have to move? I don't want to leave my friends. That emotion can then turn into being me feeling anxious. My behavior can end up being close myself off from my family and loved ones. I can approach it in a different manner, which would be, my parent was always so stressed at work. Now they can look at something better and we can spend more time together. That would make me feel happy. And my behavior would be more on a positive approach, where I would be helping my family with chores and planning fun things to do for the family during the time we're home.
Mm-hmm. So again, a negative situation, and really you can feel both ways about this. You can feel a little nervous, and you can also feel happy that your parent will be more available to you. But take a look here. When you're thinking about not wanting to leave your friends and possibly feeling anxious, and then what you're doing is the very thing that you don't want to do. You start closing yourself off from people. So again, it's very important to kind of check in with yourself and pay attention to your thoughts and see what's going on. Because as we've seen in these examples, it's so much more than the events that happen. It's more what we're thinking about them.
And students out there, if you have any comments, please continue to add them into the student response box.
So again, as illustrated in all of these examples, we unfortunately, we cannot control the thoughts that come into our mind. We can only control what we do with them. Some of us are wired to be more nervous. Some of us are wired to be more angry. Some of us are wired, to be kind of, get excited about things. So we're all wired in very different ways, and we can't control the thoughts that come into our mind. But with practice, we can absolutely control what we do with these thoughts. And if we think about our examples, most of us don't have a crystal ball and can't predict the future or read other people's minds. And so what we're really doing so much of the time is guessing what's going on and really making that our truth when it might not be.
And making it the worst case scenario too.
And a lot of the time that's anxiety.
Before we go into the anxiety, Dr. Schumann, I just had a question. I know that some of us are thinking of different things that are occurring during the day and with what's happening with in the world today. And one of my anxieties, and I know you're going to be going into this, comes into something like a feeling. I'm kind of feeling a little anxious about going to the mall. And some of the thoughts that go into my mind are, what if? What if it's crowded? What if I end up not feeling well, I'm feeling sick? What if I bring the illness to my family and loved ones? So I have a lot of what ifs, and that creates my anxiety. Can you assist us through this emotion?
I think you're one step ahead of the game. You've identified that you felt anxious, and you've checked in with yourself to see what you're thinking. And what you've recognized is that you're doing a lot of what if. What if I get sick? What if I can't, what if it's crowded? What if I can't socially distance? So I'm just going to stop you. Imagine a big stop sign. And why don't you try to answer those questions? So what if you're at the mall and you can't socially distance? What will you do?
I can walk to another part of the mall that may not have as many people.
Okay.
I can leave the mall.
You can leave them all. Okay, so you're not stuck there. Okay. And, unfortunately, during this time, getting sick it's always a risk. So what we can do is minimize the risk as much as we can, and kind of weigh the pros and cons of how important something is to us. And so going to the mall is important to you. So what is it that you can do to minimize the risk of getting sick?
Prepare before heading to the mall. Make sure I have my sanitizer.
Okay.
Make sure I have a mask. And I have a plan that in the event I start to not feel comfortable, what I could do.
Okay. So now what we've done, you had all these what if questions kind of going around in your mind, and now what we started to do just in about 30 seconds is kind of make a plan. Do you feel any different, Ms. Paridi, once with this plan in place?
Yes, because I feel like I'm not stuck at the mall once I arrive. I know that I have a way out.
Right, so you're thinking that you're not stuck. And then what happens to your anxiety level? Stays the same, goes up, goes down?
It goes down.
Okay, very good. So slide. So anxiety, by definition, is fear of the future. It's asking ourselves what if questions. What if I fail the test? And then you're not answering it. What if I fail the test? Turns into what if I fail the marking period? What if I fail the year? What if I don't graduate high school? What if I don't get into college? What if I can't support myself or my family? What if I'm homeless? What if I become homeless? What if I can't find any shelter? So now what you've done is it's like a snowball rolling down a snowy hill, turning into an avalanche of these what if questions. And so when we're able to pay attention to what we're thinking, so a lot of the time use your negative emotions or your emotions as an alarm to check in. Okay, I'm feeling very anxious. What is it that I'm thinking? And what you can do is what we did with Ms. Paridi. So what if I fail the test? If I fail the test, then I will work harder next time. I'll go to extra help. I'll do all these things. And so one quick strategy to remember to a good check-in with yourself to kind of check out your thoughts and see maybe some of them might not be true is the 2 R's. Recognize what you're thinking and reroute it. And one way to do that is by asking yourself, what are the facts? Your friend posted a snap and didn't answer your text. That's the fact. What would you say to a friend if your friend were in that situation? Or you can think about, how is this thought helping me? So you're thinking about your parent or guardian that was let go from their job, and you're thinking about all the negative things that can happen. And unfortunately, our reality is that some of those things might be true, but we're not mind readers. We can't predict the future. And so those thoughts, when we recognize how they're making us feel, we can try to do something like distract ourselves. And Ms. Perez will be going into that later. So recognize, reroute. Reroute by asking yourself, what are the facts? What would I say to a friend? And how is this thought helping me?
I love it. That's excellent. Especially since all the stressful things that we've gone through since March 12th. There's a lot of things that we didn't get to have happen. So I know a lot of you maybe haven't been able to see certain loved ones for a very long period of time, or maybe still haven't. Some of you may have dealt with the illness, whether with yourself or with a family member or with a close friend. Some of you could just be upset about no sports happening. I coach lacrosse. I was really looking forward to the spring season, and I got 5 days of it. And although professional sports are back on TV, you can't even buy a ticket and go watch them in person and spend more time with the people you love doing something like that. Lost celebrations. So many of you probably had a birthday since the pandemic hit. I know I did. Or other celebrations, elementary school graduation, middle school graduation, high school graduation, even like a special birthday, like a sweet 16 or something, or getting your license, things that would be really exciting that didn't get a proper celebration. And that could lead us to feeling sad, anxious, scared, and that's all normal. Those are all feelings that people who go through these things will feel. And what you're feeling is actually grief. So people tend to associate grief with the loss of a loved one or a loss of a friend. And grief is, by definition, just going through a loss. And all those things we mentioned on the previous slide, yeah, you maybe weren't able to see loved ones, or maybe you dealt with an illness or looking forward to something exciting. You lost something, and that is grief. And grief looks different on everybody, but every feeling that you are experiencing is valid. So let me go into grief a little bit
Ms.
more.
Abadi, before we go into the grief part, would it be a good way to try to, because we have all to some degree have had to face a loss during this time, to challenge our energy in different venues? For example, I know for myself, I've had the opportunity to complete more puzzles. I've had more time to watch movies that I've been wanting to watch, just never had a chance to. Even, you know, read a book that I've been looking forward to reading because I heard about it or my friend had read it. Is it a good way to approach that energy and channel it to a more productive approach?
Absolutely. That's, again, taking that same situation that a lot of people may be going through and changing your feelings and behaviors towards that. Like, I know I kind of did similar things. My family got very into taking walks, like with and without the dog, just to be outside. Again, we watched shows that we would never watch together. I learned a couple recipes myself. So if you all experience something fun that you learned maybe like through this time, definitely like write in the chat box. We love to hear. I'm always looking for new ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you look at this image here, there are actually 5 stages of grief. And it's important to note that not everybody goes through them. Not everybody goes through them in the same order or in the same time frame. And those stages are denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. One thing I want to talk about with acceptance doesn't mean that you like necessarily what's going on with that loss in your life. It's more of knowing that it's now your new norm, such as if you have to go out in public, you have to wear a mask, accepting that, yeah, I don't like it, but now I know that's how it has to be. So just going right after that, denial, not really like thinking that it's fully happening. So not accepting that it's now your norm. That's usually why it's typically the first stage, but again, not everybody goes through it. Anger, feeling the frustration, feeling rebellion about everything that's going on with you. Depression, again, that extreme sadness about the loss. Bargaining is one that tends to be a little tricky for some people, and that's those what if statements again. Well, what if I prepared a little bit better for that test? I would have done better. What if I didn't go to that celebration? Would my friends be mad at me? Situations like that, thinking that if I had changed my behavior, the outcome would have been better. So just very important to know that whatever stage of grief you may have gone through or are currently going through, they're all normal. There is no rush to go through grief. It's a natural human emotion, but it's stressful. So as Dr. Shimon said before, stress is something that was actually like a survival method back when we were cave people. But it's not just that physical response thinking, oh my goodness, there's a saber-toothed tiger. It's mental and social as well, and actually both positive and negative. So let's talk about positive and negative stress. So as Dr. Shimon said before, that whole wave example, I like to use that, but in talking about roller coasters, if you put 2 people on a roller coaster, one person's definitely going to love it and have the time of their lives, and the other person's going to be wishing it's over the second they got strapped in. Different between having fun and feeling stressed out. People tend to think when they hear stress, they think of that negative stress that's usually seen as like outside of our coping abilities or our ability to deal with it. It's something that somebody's very overwhelmed by. It can lead to other mental and physical and social problems, and it's unpleasant. Meanwhile, that positive stress, it motivates you. It's fun. It's exciting, usually short term, and something that you can deal with. So something like this, like public speaking. I was really excited for this webinar this morning because I was hoping some of my former students or current students would be logging on. I miss them. I miss being in the classroom. I miss doing presentations like this. So this was definitely a positive stress for me.
So while I definitely agree with some of what you're saying, I think I had a little more negative stress because I was wondering more, you know, what if I don't do a good job? What if I mess up? What if nobody likes it? You know, so I think that I really had to do a good job of checking in with what was going on, and to kind of, you know, to bring myself back down. Yep.
Yeah, and I agree with Dr. Shipman as well, because my emotion towards leading up to this morning has been more that stressful feeling and in the worrying aspect of it. So it's interesting. How
And
about you, Ms. Perez?
I actually felt a little bit of both. I actually enjoy this. I wanted to like to teach some strategies and techniques with you guys, but also I felt a little bit stressed because my internet and on this new platform, I felt like my connection went off. What do I do? So I had to prepare, wake up a little bit earlier, and just get my computer set so that way no intersections can happen.
Yeah, same situation for all four of us, completely different emotions and behaviors, just like we were saying before, and all of them are normal.
And those are the positive way to really deal with the stressor than dealing with the negative and not approaching it. So it didn't stop us from presenting today. It still made us, gave us that adrenaline to go ahead and do it. And we're excited because we're all here together. And hopefully you could see us and hear us. And any comments you have, please continue to add them on the student response box.
And I think what we did when Ms. Pretty was talking about the mall is exactly what Ms. Perez did. We talked about what you did was you woke up a little bit earlier. You kind of made a plan for yourself. So you acted differently, relieve some of what you were feeling. So you prepared. And a lot of the time you think about something like nervousness or anxiety, that's one crucial step to helping yourself feel better.
Exactly.
So I think maybe like Dr. Shipman and Mrs. Paridi might have had some of that headaches and that symptoms of stress. They might have had that worried thinking. Maybe they're a little bit more fussy this morning because those are all signs your body is stressed out. And even though our stressors don't come from those physical threats anymore, like the saber-toothed tiger, we're still going to react the same way, whether it was a failed test or we get a bill we don't know if we can fully pay, things that maybe don't need a physical response, but our body's still going to have that same reaction, which is very interesting. So actually, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Shipman because there's another video. I know she'll share her screen for that. So let me just bop right out so she can pull it up to see how stress is actually really helpful to us. And we're going to encounter it every day, but it's about how you tackle it.
All right, here we go.
Stress is usually seen as something we need to avoid. This is not true. We need stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol to rise and fall throughout the day. Stress helps us wake up in the morning, helps us focus, learn, and remember new things. It's when people experience too much stress and start having difficulties coping that stress becomes a problem. High levels of stress can disrupt the natural changes in the body's stress response system and start to affect our physical and mental health. Over time, accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress tolerance, the bucket analogy can be helpful. Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket.
Thank you for that. I just like how that video shows that, you know, we may all go through different stressors, but it's going to affect us all differently just based on how we're wired. And we can't really help that, but we can help how we react to stress. So Mrs. Perez, when I get the PowerPoint back up,
Thank you.
sorry, Mrs. Perez, when I get the PowerPoint back up, you are going to walk us through some coping strategies. Just as an aside, if you do like the coping mechanisms that Mrs. Perez is about to go into, there is a coping and balancing webinar on Thursday the 6th at 10 a.m. That dives more into how to deal with stress effectively.
Thank you, Ms. Madi. So I know we spoke a lot today about the reasons we feel the way we do and how having a healthy balance of emotions is necessary. But how do we really deal with stress? Well, we can eliminate or really reduce our exposure to stress. And changing our perception of stress will help us as well. Accepting that we cannot change stressful events in our lives, but how do we deal with them? How do we change our perception of it? Just like the scenarios we went over, we have to change our thoughts because, as you guys should remember, our feelings are linked to our thoughts and our behavior. Okay, so the next slide, please. These are some strategies we have for you so you could be able to slow down and really just ground yourself when you are in a moment of need or intense emotions. We have mindfulness, which I'll go over. You can do meditation, journaling, write down how you're feeling, write down all your emotions, and that way you can go over it on your alone time and see how you're really feeling and how you're dealing with it. Talk to yourself, progressive muscle relaxation, and also, guys, YouTube is your friend. We all use YouTube. You can always Google something, how to deal with anxiety, mindfulness. They have several videos online that you can, it walks you through it. And Dr. Shidman will go over the breathing technique. So you guys can implement that as well.
Sure. So as you see here, there are a lot of different techniques that people use because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Some people, progressive muscle relaxation is when you kind of just focus in on every muscle and tensing and releasing. And sometimes that doesn't work for people. They don't want to pay attention to their sensation and what they're feeling. Sometimes the breathing is difficult. And so there are a lot of very different strategies that you can use and until you find one that's right for you. So one strategy that is very simple to do and that there is so much research on is breathing. Taking control of your breathing. We spoke a lot about anxiety and what happens in our body, that physically we start to breathe faster or slower, or whatever is happening in our body. And taking control of our breath, of our physiologically what's going on, is sometimes a little bit easier than checking in and challenging and changing our thoughts. So I'm just going to go through it very quickly. Everyone just make yourselves comfortable. And what this technique is, it's breathing in through your nose for a count of 4, holding for a count of 7, and breathing out for a count of 8. It's not seconds, it's just a count. So I'll take everyone through it. Make yourselves comfortable, close your eyes or don't, and take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and breathe out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, a lot of the time when I do some of these practices with students or someone who's never done them before, I tell them about it, they think, well, that just made me kind of out of breath. And that's okay. That's to be expected. And that's what practice is about. Practicing, checking in with your thoughts, controlling your thoughts, changing your thoughts. All of this is very hard work. So imagine that you're going into, a new language class, and your teacher comes in and says, "Speak that language." Everyone's going to look around and think that that is so silly, because how can you speak a language that you've never practiced? Well, this is the same thing. The practice of changing our thoughts, changing the way we feel when we don't like it, will take a lot of practice, as will these coping strategies as well. So don't give up and keep at it.
Right. Thank you. And also, our breath is so important when we combine it with mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is an act of being aware of your present moment instead of replaying the past or worrying about our future. It's really bringing all the awareness of everything that's happening in the now, even if there's some pleasant or neutral. Okay? So you want to be aware and engaged in everyday life. if you practice mindfulness, like we're doing now, we will do now, you'll be able to put distance between the intensity of an emotion and the way in which you choose to react towards it. This is especially important during these times of uncertainty and when we may have some stressful thoughts. Okay, so now the whole point of mindfulness is not to get rid of your thoughts, including the negative ones, but to develop a different relationship towards them, a non-judgmental relationship. And we really need to understand that they are feelings, but they are not us, okay? And I want to leave here today showing you guys how to implement mindfulness using your 5 senses. And this is really an easy way that you can do it on your own time, and you can use it during a moment of intense emotion, okay? So I want you to comment down below once we go through the activity. How do you feel? Did you like using your 5 senses? Was it easy? Is it something you can implement on your own? And just leave it all in the chat box below, okay? So if you follow me, I want you guys to just get comfortable as well and take a deep breath in, relax, place your hands beside you, and continue with a few more breaths. Now I want you to tune into what you can hear around you. I don't want you to judge the sounds around you as positive or negative. Just notice them. You might notice someone talking, maybe music, you could probably hear traffic, nature. So now bring your attention back to your breath. After hearing, switch your attention over to your sense of smell. What are some scents you could pick up in your surroundings right now? Open your eyes and look around. Take in the details of your space. And what can you see? What colors are present? Are there any shapes visible? And now focus on the sensations in your mouth. What tastes, if any, remain from a previous meal or drink? Lastly, turn your attention to touch. When you first started this exercise, you placed your hands on the side. Are they still there? And what can you feel under your hands? So now let's just not focus on your hands. Think about what is under your feet. And are you sitting or laying down? Notice all of the textures around you. Now I want you guys to take a deep breath in and exhale. And how did this exercise feel? Okay, so just comment down below. And I hope that you guys can use this strategy to feel, like I said, more grounded in a moment of uncertainty. And remember that our feelings are linked to our thoughts and behavior. And we could all change that. And we can see how our mind runs with our thoughts, and we can just ground ourselves using these techniques we just gave you. Okay, next slide.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Again, if you really liked mindfulness or you want to learn more coping strategies, Thursday the 6th at 10 a.m. is the Coping and Balancing Forum for students.
Mm-hmm. So the only person we'll leave you with is you're the only person who controls your stress level, okay? And you're the only one who can control how you react towards it, and it really will determine the outcome of your body and how you feel, okay? So it was great talking to you guys and interacting with you. And if you have any questions or comments, just please leave everything in the comment box below.
Thank you for joining us, students.
Thank you. And again, remember, the way that you feel is the way that you feel. And that's, again, as all of us have said at one point or another during this talk, is it's never wrong. But if you find that you don't like it or that it's leading to some negative outcomes, remember to check in with yourself.